A French customer exclaimed, "Can I only be helped in English?" and started to leave the booth. Panicking, I called out to them. "What? No way, Thomas?" I could sense Emily and the staff were surprised. Feeling their reactions behind me, My name is Thomas. I'm 32 years old. I work as a brewer at a slightly larger brewery. My maternal grandfather used to run a small brewery. However, he closed it down when I was in elementary school. There was talk of my mother or aunt taking a husband to keep the family business going, but my grandfather declined, saying he didn't want them tied down to the family. I loved the unique smell of the brewery, my grandfather's dedication to brewing, and the kindness of the brewers, so I wanted to take over. However, while my family was living in Germany due to my father's job, my grandfather closed the brewery. When something is gone, it only makes you want it more. After graduating from college, I worked for a small trading company, but my longing for my grandfather's brewery grew stronger. I decided to quit and join a slightly larger local brewery. I work hard at brewing every day, hoping to one day revive my grandfather's liquor. "Excuse me. Is Thomas here?" I heard a woman's voice calling for me from the entrance. When I rushed over, there stood Emily, a petite woman with fair skin and big eyes. Her skin was as smooth and soft as ever. I don't usually comment on a woman's age, but it's impressive that she's 30 years old. Her skin could easily be mistaken for a high school student's. And surprisingly, despite her appearance, she's a heavy drinker. She claims she joined this brewery because she loves liquor, and she works in the administrative office. During her interview, she passionately talked about our liquor and hit it off with our president, Mr. Smith. Since then, I've often seen her having casual conversations with him. When I'm with her, I can't help but be a little mesmerized. Are you listening? She brought me back to reality. What was that again? I stumbled over my words, and Emily sighed. I said, "Here on your resume. It says you speak German. How well do you speak it?" She pouted with her full lips. I lived there for a few years as a kid, so I can manage." She widened her eyes. "Wow, so you're a returnee." That made me a bit embarrassed. Yeah, I guess so," I replied, and she chuckled. "What?" I asked, and she burst out laughing again. "Thomas, is really your catchphrase, isn't it?" I don't usually notice, but hearing it so many times in a row just got me. She laughed heartily with her adorable face. After laughing for a while, she looked at me seriously and said, "Actually, we have the opportunity to exhibit at a brewery exhibition in Germany." With some excitement. I had a bad feeling about this. I've been proposing this to Mr. Smith for a while, and it's finally happening. The main communication will be in English. Even though sales is not my usual role, I'll study for the exhibition," she said with a slight flare of her nostrils. "But since the exhibition is in Germany, we need someone who speaks German, and I want you to come with us, Thomas." My bad feeling was confirmed, and I grimaced. There it is again. Well, as you can probably tell from my catchphrase, I'm not good at communication, negotiations are out of the question. As I started to speak, she patted her chest. "Don't worry. I'll handle the negotiations. Thomas, I just need you to help with local transportation and guiding." Even as I hesitated, she flashed a bright smile and said, "It's already decided. Mr. Smith has approved you coming along." "Really, just guiding, right?" I get extremely nervous, and I don't think I'll be of any use during negotiations. When I get nervous, I get stomachaches," I muttered, feeling pathetic even as I said it. Emily burst out laughing again. "You really have no confidence, huh? Even though you look quite handsome." Her words made my face turn bright red. Indeed, my mother is beautiful, and I inherited her big eyes and relatively tall stature. However, being suddenly thrown into Germany without knowing any German left a lasting impression of struggle in my mind. Of course, after living there for several years, I became fluent, but I was never completely confident that my German sounded native. Similarly, I sometimes lack confidence in my English as well. Over the next few days, as the exhibition approached, I found myself spending more time on tasks related to the exhibition than on my usual brewing duties. Even though Emily would handle the negotiations, I needed to have some knowledge to be useful. Naturally, as a brewer, I have extensive knowledge of liquor. However, I needed to learn about pricing, taste descriptions, and presentation methods that appeal to international audiences. Emily eagerly absorbed all this information. She joined the company because she loves liquor but was a bit dissatisfied that she couldn't bring the liquor all over the world. Now, a significant opportunity had come her way. If this exhibition goes well, it could boost our overseas sales. More importantly, she seems passionate about sharing her love for liquor with people from other countries. Seeing her excitement as she prepared was motivating for me as well. Finally, the day before the exhibition arrived. Emily, a few staff members, and I landed in Germany. It had been a long time, but it felt nostalgic to be in the country where I used to live. The familiar sound of German in the air added to the nostalgia. That day, we checked into our hotel, had a quick dinner to rally our spirits, and then went to bed. However, I couldn't sleep. Being unable to sleep the night before a big event has been a habit since childhood. I remembered Emily looking around with sparkling eyes in Germany. She said she would wear a classy dress for the event tomorrow. She would undoubtedly look divinely beautiful. Imagining her like that made me feel light and finally allowed me to drift off to sleep. The next day arrived. It was the day of the exhibition. I found myself hiding in the restroom at the venue. We had arrived at the venue to set up, and I was first amazed by its size. Then, I was stunned by the number of people. With over 5,000 exhibitors, my stomach churned loudly. "Are you okay?" Emily, looking elegant in her dress with her semi-long black hair styled into a bun, peered at my sweaty face. Barely, I managed to say, I think so. But when Emily, in high spirits, said, "I heard there will be over 50,000 visitors over 3 days. I want lots of people to try our liquor." My stomachache peaked. So, I ended up making trips to the restroom while preparing for the exhibition. 5 minutes before opening, I found myself locked in the restroom. Even though Emily would handle the negotiations, I had to help distribute pamphlets and offer samples with the other staff. With our small team, we might not be able to handle the crowd if many visitors came. The more I panicked, the worse my stomachache got. I took deep breaths to calm myself. Thanks to deep breathing and a trusty stomach medicine, I finally recovered and managed to leave the restroom. As soon as I saw the crowd, I felt dizzy. I almost headed back to the restroom, but I had a responsibility to the liquor I had carefully crafted. I wanted many people to taste the liquor we made. I had the same desire. Gathering my courage, I returned to our booth. Sorry for being late. When I hurried back and apologized, I noticed Emily and the other staff looking a bit dejected. While other booths were bustling, ours was empty. What happened?" I asked, and Emily slowly lifted her head. "With just English, we couldn't communicate very well." I was surprised. Emily explained that while English worked, the first group that came by was from Germany. They would consult in German after Emily explained in English and then ask questions in English again. Despite Emily's answers, they tilted their heads in confusion. Nearby booths were filled with conversations in German. The Germans glanced over, nodded at each other, and said, "Your dress is very beautiful," before moving on to other booths. Their awkward exchanges left our booth empty in no time. If I had been there, this might not have happened. I scolded myself internally. Get it together, Thomas. It's my fault Emily looks like this. What about the stomachache? The poor communication. I love the liquor I made, don't I? Promote it seriously. Then, I slapped my cheeks hard. The sound startled Emily and the staff. I exhaled deeply. Let's turn this around. I'll do the calling. Emily, please handle anyone who speaks English, I said and began calling out in German. Soon, several Germans responded. Being in Germany, there were many Germans around. They asked about our products, so I explained. Prices, quantities available for distribution, flavor profiles. I answered all their questions. Was my German coming across correctly? The response wasn't bad. I asked if they spoke English and, when they nodded yes, handed them over to Emily. The customers praised Emily's dress and listened intently to her explanations. Once people started gathering, more showed interest. This made the staffs who didn't speak English also handle the explanations. Emily was handling most of the interactions, but then I heard a small gasp. What? I quickly asked what was wrong, and she said, they're from France, and not good with English, looking flustered and pale. This exhibition allowed general visitors along with business people who could negotiate in English. My English isn't getting through, a French customer said sadly and was about to leave the booth. Panicking, I called out. What? No way, Thomas? I could sense Emily and the staff were surprised. Feeling their reactions behind me, I spoke to the French customers in French. I really only know a little, but I should be able to manage everyday conversation. I prefaced with my limited skills and spoke in French. The customers responded with smiles. At this point, the nuances didn't matter. As long as they understood our liquor was delicious, that was fine. I considered using a translation app but wanted to explain my precious liquor in my own words. I couldn't afford to say I was bad at communication. While Emily and the others widened their eyes, they continued attending to the other customers. The French customers stared at Emily. They then complimented her, saying, her skin is so beautiful. I explained what Emily had told me during preparations. A facial mask made from liquor lees. It has moisturizing effects that prevent dry skin and make it smooth and fine. When I shared Emily's words, they were very impressed and decided to purchase them. I instructed them to always dissolve it in distilled water and handed them a sheet with instructions in English. The French customers left delighted. We continued to assist various customers, and our business cards and pamphlets quickly depleted. When things finally calmed down, we took a short break. I quickly gulped down some water to soothe my dry throat. Emily sat down next to me. Thomas, who are you? With my tired mind, I tried to understand what she meant. You spoke Italian and Spanish too. How many languages can you speak? Her question left me a bit flustered. I'm not fluent in all of them, besides German, I lack confidence. It was just from vacations and some other things. During the years we lived in Germany due to my father's job, we traveled across Europe on holidays. While English often sufficed, many people in France and Italy preferred their native languages. To avoid being rude and facilitate smooth communication, my parents and I studied the local languages before vacations and tried to speak them during our travels. It was mostly just enough to get by. People were kind enough to talk slowly or repeat things. It's like when foreigners speak English to us, we listen patiently. It's probably like that. I'm far from native. I admitted to Emily that besides English and German, I could also speak a bit of French, Italian, Spanish, and Danish. That's amazing, 6 languages? Emily's eyes widened in awe. Then she looked down, crestfallen. I'm embarrassed, but I can't really speak any other languages. She covered her face. Seeing her like that, I hurriedly denied it. Wait. You're doing also good with negotiating and communicating with people. I am totally bad at those. Anne? I hesitated a bit. Emily looked at me expectantly. Well, the reason I was able to do my best today is because I wanted to be like you, Emily. The words didn't come out right. I usually struggle with communication and thought I'd never handle negotiations, but I didn't want to see you sad. I wanted you to feel confident. After all the preparation you did. As I stumbled through my explanation, Emily finally smiled. Without thinking, I reached out to touch her skin. Her cheek was smooth, elastic, and pure white. Emily blushed and exclaimed, "What?" Thomas, flustered, I snapped back to reality. Sorry. I mean, the French customer was praising your skin so much and bought the liquor lees, I just wanted to touch it too. I sound like a creep, sorry, Emily. Seeing my panic, Emily burst out laughing. I'm glad they were interested in the liquor lees mask. Thank you. Her radiant smile prompted me to say more. Just you standing there is a great promotion for the liquor lees mask. Let's keep smiling and do our best until the end. Emily said, Thomas, you're like a different person today. Yes, let's do our best. Let's show our products to as many people as possible. And raised her fist in a small cheer. Her gesture was so cute that I couldn't help but mimic it. The 3 days of the exhibition were truly like a storm. But the sparkling liquor we brought for the international market was a hit, and many were surprisingly interested in the liquor lees. We nearly closed deals with several companies. Now we just had to finalize quantities and delivery dates with the company. After the 3 days, Emily and I celebrated with a toast at a great German beer hall. Cheers! Great job! The sound of our large mugs clinking was satisfying. Cheers! Thanks for everything! With a big smile, she downed her drink in one go. The staff who had come with us were exhausted and just wanted to rest, so it was just Emily and me celebrating. It was really amazing to see people enjoying our products so much. It was the best 3 days ever. On the last day, someone even asked if we would consider opening a brewery in Germany. That would be incredible if it happens. I heard similar things too. People asked us to open a brewery in Europe. If that ever comes true, I'd like to revive my grandpa's liquor. I murmured my wish. Emily looked at me, puzzled. Oh, I mean, it might be difficult with the water and all, but my grandpa used to run a small brewery. He closed it down while we were living in Germany. I always wanted to bring that liquor back, but I don't think it's possible without him. Emily tilted her head slightly. Is your grandfather still around? I smiled. Yes, he is. He always says I shouldn't have closed the brewery if Thomas was going to become a brewer. He's regretted it so much. I really wanted to take over his brewery, but I don't even know what his liquor tasted like. It's such a shame. In fact, I know the last bottle is carefully stored under the floor, but it must taste different now. It might have aged well, but it's probably a completely different drink. Running a brewery is tough. My grandpa had a friend who ran a brewery, and he looked forward to receiving their new liquor every year. He used to open it joyfully on New Year's Day, but then they closed down, and it stopped. What was it called again? I think it had Moon in the name. Emily was trying to recall, rubbing her forehead. Mountain Moon, I murmured. Emily clapped her hands. Yes. That's it. Wait, what? Both of us stared at each other in silence. That was the name of the liquor my grandpa made. He used to send it to his best friend to check that year's quality, I said, breaking the silence. Emily mumbled that best friend was my grandpa? We looked at each other and gasped in amazement. No way. What a coincidence. That's amazing. Emily exclaimed. Yeah, it's unbelievable. But my grandpa used to say, this year's batch is a masterpiece, or this year's batch is not so good, after calling his friend every new year. Wow, I'm getting goosebumps. I said, hugging my arms. Then I remembered something. Yeah, he used to say, his granddaughter is about the same age as me. The fun of the drinks loosened my tongue, and I let slip more. He said I've reserved her as your fiancée. As soon as I said it, I regretted it. But once spoken, the words couldn't be taken back. Emily's face turned red. It didn't seem to be just from the alcohol. I desperately tried to cover it up. Well, it's funny. We've never even been introduced, right? It's kinda strange. I stammered, my face growing redder. Emily stayed silent. She stayed red-faced and looking down for a while, then glanced up at me. Her big eyes looked up at me. How about we actually make that happen? She said from her plump lips. What do you mean? Emily laughed at my catchphrase. So, well. She giggled while mimicking my catchphrase. How about dating the Thomas who was so cool these past 3 days and surprising our grandpas? I felt like my brain had exploded from the shock. What? What? I could barely form words, and Emily burst out laughing. You're like a completely different person from the exhibition. It's so funny. Emily couldn't stop laughing at my flustered reaction. With my face still red as a boiled lobster, I was left speechless, just stammering. After laughing for a while, Emily looked at me with a mischievous smile. That gap might be cute. Her words knocked me out, and I could only nod repeatedly, unable to say anything more. That night, I couldn't sleep at all, so I wrote Emily a letter. I was too tongue-tied to express myself properly in words. It might have been a bit heavy, a long letter filled with my feelings for Emily, which I slipped under the door of her hotel room. I didn't know if she would read it. She might not even notice it, but it was the best I could do at the moment. Still too excited to sleep, I dozed off in the hotel bed. In the early morning, I was startled awake by a loud knock on my door. Groggy, I opened the door, and Emily rushed in. She hugged me tightly. I was instantly wide awake. In her hand was the letter I had written. "This is the most wonderful love letter I've ever received," she exclaimed excitedly. Suddenly embarrassed, I started to say, if you've read it, could you throw it away? But she hugged me even tighter. "I'd never throw it away. I'll treasure it forever," she said firmly. Writing it down might be even more embarrassing than saying it. But seeing Emily blush and smile contentedly, I decided I would always put my important feelings into letters. The exhibition was a great success, and I gained such a lovely girlfriend. I was now the happiest I had ever been in my life. Afterward, the company was fully occupied with negotiations from abroad. We increased production, and I was busy with brewing, but dealing with international negotiations also became part of my job. Emily was also busy negotiating with overseas companies. Although the idea of opening a brewery overseas didn't progress easily, Mr. Smith asked me directly if I would help if it ever came to fruition. I declined. The truth was, I had begun to take serious steps toward my own dream. When I shared my dream with Mr. Smith, he smiled warmly and promised his full support. After that, I worked tirelessly at the company while striving to realize my dream. 10 years later, I revived my grandfather's brewery. Initially, my grandfather was adamant about not reopening it, saying it had already been closed once. So, I first went to see Emily's grandfather. Emily's grandfather said he would spare no effort if it meant reviving Mountain Moon. Surprising my grandfather with Emily, her grandfather, and me visiting him, he was extremely shocked. And he was overjoyed that the joke about making their grandchildren fiancés had become a reality. While that excitement didn't immediately lead to reopening the brewery, my grandfather gave me a condition. He said if I trained myself thoroughly at my current brewery and still had the passion, and if he remained in good health, he would consider reopening it. And so, 10 years passed. My grandfather significantly limited his beloved liquor, improved his diet, and maintained his health. Naturally, he took the lead in reviving the brewery. In his mid-80s, he remained robust, and his skills, honed over a lifetime, hadn't diminished. The liquor we produced is set to be sold nationwide and overseas through the brewery where Emily and I used to work. Today marks the day when the first batch of new liquor from the revived brewery is completed. It was carefully poured into each glass, and my grandfather took the first sip. A single tear fell from his eye. Emily's grandfather also quietly savored the first sip of the revived liquor with his eyes closed. It's probably still not quite at the level of my grandfather's liquor from back then. But in a good way, it has its own unique flavor. It's like Emily and I, and our children. Just as Emily and I, who were once merely colleagues, became a married couple. Just as my grandfather and Emily's grandfather, who were longtime friends, became true family. With the birth of our children, our family became even more lively. The liquor changes in form and flavor over time. The shape of happiness at each moment will deepen the taste of the new Mountain Moon. Tears also shone in Emily's ever-beautiful eyes. I put my arm around her shoulder and gently pulled her closer. We had been through hardships together. Yet, we supported each other with unwavering smiles. There will surely be more challenges ahead. But I hope we can overcome them with the same smiles. Listening to the cheerful voices of our children playing, I quietly wished for this.